I start?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I've been directed to chair this meeting by the president. So I'm carrying out my duty as a loyal member of the academy. The topic is a very, very interesting one. And it has to do with the 2024 American election and American presidential election and sustainable peace and development in the world, implications for Africa. And the lecturer is no other than Professor David Alabi, who is from the Nigerian Defense Academy. I don't know whether our paths crossed, but I was once at the academy also as provost from 1992 to 1996. Maybe he hadn't joined. Yes.
No, I was there.
Okay. Okay. So NDA academics are very sound, and I'm sure that we will be intellectually well stimulated and entertained today. So he's a professor of political science, and I will just yield the floor to him to deliver his lecture. Thank you very much, Professor Alabi.
Yes, thank you so very much, the chairman, Professor Musali Jubre, who happened to be my academic provost in the 1990s in the Nigerian Defense Academy. Prof, sir, I want to use this medium to most sincerely thank you for the good job you did while in the academy. We are very proud of you, sir. I also want to use this medium to express my profound gratitude to the president, Nigeria, this body, for giving me this opportunity to speak to a very important aspect of international politics, international relations, and global affairs, which is the 2024 American presidential elections and sustainable peace and development in the world, implications for Africa. There is this common saying that when America sneezes, Europe catches cold. Well, only God knows what will happen to the third world. God forbid, maybe the third world will develop pneumonia and die off, and die off rather. So from this statement, it becomes very apparent that America is a superpower of significance. And whatever happens in that country has tremendous implications for the other parts of the world. And this is why election years in the United States are very important years, and the 2024 presidential elections in the United States that eventually brought in Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States was one that has come with unusual implications for the world. It has brought a new president who was sworn in on January 20, 2025. I brought in a unique president with unusual tactics and policies, not only in the United States, but in the entire world. So there's a need for us to look at the import of his presidency, not only for Africa, but the entire world at large. So once again, I thank this body, this august body, for providing this platform for me. I thank the president. I also want to thank the former commandant of the National Institute for Security Studies, Alhaji A.S. Adeleke, who gave me the opportunity to be a faculty member of that great institute, where we worked extensively on security studies. So I can probably say now that I'm a professor of political science, defense studies, and security studies. Well, by way of introduction, let me start by saying that the United States is a very great country with unique significance for the world. And I want to anchor this on four important points. The first is that the United States is the global superpower with the greatest global reach. It remains the world's leading superpower in terms of military strength, economic influence, and technological innovation. It maintains the largest defense budget and a network of military bases worldwide, ensuring strategic dominance. There's no doubting the fact that the United States is the most important superpower as of today. And it has the largest defense budget. It has the strongest military in all of human history, and as of today. So to that extent, we need to take note of what happens there. Then again, the United States is an economic powerhouse. As the world's largest economy, the United States plays a central role in global trade, finance, and investment. The US dollar is the primary reserve currency, and the Wall Street influences global market. So without doubting, there's no doubting the fact that the United States is the strongest economy in the world. It has the strongest military in the world today, and perhaps in all of human history. So to that extent, this country is a country that no country in the world can afford to ignore. And that is why we are looking at his 2024 elections and the import of Donald Trump as his 47th president. Again, in terms of diplomatic and political influence, the United States is a key player in international institutions like the United States, NATO, and the G7. At a point, it was even stated that the United States was paying 25% of the budget of the United Nations. So you can imagine what will happen if this country withdraws from such a body. So the United States is a key player in most of the international institutions in the world, at least that cuts across the entire world. In foreign policy decisions have significant global implications for climate change policies to international security. If you look at the issue of this climate change, I think I need to pause here for a while and have a look at it. If you look at what is happening in the Sahel region of the world, in which we have countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger Republic, and even to some extent, the northern part of Nigeria, you find out that all these places have been ravaged by terrorist organizations, terrorist cells, religious fundamentalism, Boko Haram insurgency, and all forms of security challenges. And this is one of the reasons behind this is the climate change. If you look at the northern part of Nigeria, the far northern part of Nigeria, at a point, their climate could sustain pastoralism, could sustain herding, but with growing desertification and also the changing climatic conditions, this is no longer possible. That is why they started moving southwards to the Middle Belt, where we are now having a lot of crises. So the climate change, which Donald Trump is trying to walk away from, has significant importance for peace, sustainable peace and development in the world and in Africa in particular. Then, in terms of cultural and technology leadership, the Americans shaped global Silicon Valleys and social media like Facebook, Google X, and the rest of them. They are projecting American image across the world. So you can see now from all of these that the United States is a country that we need to seriously address what is going on there, the import of the new government we have there, that's the Trump administration, and its consequences for the world and for Africa in particular. So as a result of all of these developments going on in the United States now is facing serious challenges from emerging economies, countries like China, countries like India, and many other countries in the third world, especially members of the BRICS. So we can now see that the United States under Donald Trump poses serious challenges to peace and development in Africa. And this is why this paper has decided to look at what Africa could do, what Nigeria could do to reduce the negative consequences of this new administration. The framework of analysis adopted by this study is the realist theory in international affairs. Well, this theory is a theory that addresses the various contradictions in the international system. It's a power theory. And the major submission of this theory is that for any country to be relevant in the international system, we need to acquire power. So basically, the realist theory has made some submissions which relate to what we are having under Trump today. The first submission of this theory is that in the international system, for you to be relevant as a country, there are two basic imperatives that any self-respecting country must adhere strictly to. The first one is to define your national interest, which could be in terms of the maintenance of the territorial integrity of your country, the economic buoyancy of your country,
Professor Alabi, we have lost
and security.
you.
This could be part of your needs that a country must.
Professor Alabi, your connection is not strong. Your voice keeps being cut off.
Hello?
Yes, we lost you for brief periods. I think your connection ought to be better than this. You can continue.
Okay. So that the second submission is litigation, or the idea the former American president and the likes of Thomas Aquinas, who submitted that is universal. The problem facing man is still another of blind mysticism and nonsense that does not have anything to do with the internet.
Please unmute yourself. You've muted yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Professor Alabi, please unmute yourself.
Dr. Linus Ode, please keep yourself muted, please. Yeah, well, I think we're having a learn with Professor Alabi's connection.
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Now
All
we
right.
can. Yeah.
So the international system could see what happened under the presidency of George Bush Sr. When the American Marines, when they invaded Panama, they arrested their president, took him to the United States, and jailed him for 10 years. And if you look at what is happening in the Middle East, since 1967, Israel still holds on to the occupied territory, the West Bank, the Jordan, and the rest of them. Despite many UN resolutions against this occupation, Israel is still there. So this tells you that this realist theory approximates what is happening in the international systems today. Then the realists also believe that morality in international politics is a farce, quite unlike what happens at the municipal level. Morality in international politics counts for little or nothing. So what happens, what is right in international politics, according to the realists, is that you have tremendous power. And most importantly, and which is very relevant to what is happening under Trump, the realists believe that of all the institutions and structures in the international system, the nation states are the most preponderant and most influential. This is according to Hans Mogento. No matter the level and the power of any international organizations, any international organization, the most important aspect of this organization is its members. The most important actor in the international system today are the member states. And that is why Donald Trump is not ready to take cognizance of multilateralism, the international organization, so merit. The realist approach, the realist theory has significant implications for what we are witnessing under Donald Trump as of today. Now, let's look at the unique position of the United States in, I think I've stated that. Now, let's look at the import of Donald Trump. Donald Trump in international politics, his emergence within the system, what the world should expect, and what Africa should also expect. Now, like I said earlier, Donald Trump became the American president for the second time on 28 January 2025. Donald Trump has been able to come up with unique policies that are strange to international politics, that are strange to international relations. The first one here is the reduction in foreign aid to many parts of the world. Shortly after his inauguration, President Donald Trump signed Executive Order 14169, initiating a 90-day pause on US foreign policy, foreign development assistance to assess its alignment with national interests. You could see this pause. Foreign assistance, when he came to the office, one of the first things he did was to pause American foreign assistance to many countries of the world. And we could see the impact of this in the developing countries of the world, including the African countries. Secondly, as a sort of his emergence as the president of the United States, we now have a strained relationship between the NATO allies. And we need to remind ourselves that the America became a superpower through the North Atlantic Alliance, which emerged in 1945. But from the look of things now, it looks as if Donald Trump is trying to decimate all these, the NATO alliance, which brought the United States to limelight, but now is trying to dismantle this structure, which is not even good for the American interest and the world as well. Because there is that tendency that autocratic and dictatorial countries will emerge in the world, and there will be nothing to checkmate them. Russia, for instance, will be there. If you look at China and Russia, there are no democracies, but it's working for them anyway. So it's a very dangerous trend, which we are witnessing under Donald Trump. Then trade tension and tariffs. I think that one is a very straightforward one. Tariff imposed on Mexico, even Canada, the EU, China, and many other parts of the world. Now, the implications of all of this for the third world is that when you keep imposing tariffs on other countries and they too are retaliating, it's leading to a trade war among the various countries of the world. It's going to slow down the economic development in the world, especially in the Western and developed economies. When this happens, there is no way it's not going to affect what is going on in Africa and Nigeria as well. So these trade tensions and tariffs, they are a major problem that have come to the international system as a result of the emergence of Donald Trump's second presidency. Then withdraw from international organizations. I think we are aware of the fact that the United States has resolved to withdraw from the WHO, World Health Organization. We can imagine the implications of this for health and development in the world. This is likely to lead to increase in pandemics, malaria attacks, HIV, and so on and so forth. So this is a very serious measure policy that Donald Trump is trying to make. And it's going to affect nations in the world, economic development in the world. Many people will die because of preventable diseases like malaria. HIV will kill so many people, many citizens in the third world. So this is a very dangerous move that Donald Trump has embarked upon. And again, the Middle East policy, well, we are aware of the fact that he was trying to remove the Gazans from Palestine. He was trying to relocate them to other parts of the Middle East. Can you imagine that? This is ethnic cleansing. So this is one of the negative policies that Donald Trump is trying to embark upon, and we are seeing the effect now. That area is becoming more tense off as a result of all of this. Then his approach to the Ukraine war is a new one. It's taking a new dimension. Usually, most countries in the world, especially in the West, believe that Russia is the aggressor that invaded Ukraine about 3 years ago. But in the United Nations this year, Donald Trump, the United States, refused to condemn Putin. Rather, he sided with Russia at the expense of Ukraine. This is a very dangerous thing for European security. So this is one area that the whole world is getting more concerned about the policy of Trump. Then the policy of immigration and deportation. Well, we can see a lot of that. Many African countries, many citizens of Africa, Asia, and South America, they are being deported to their various countries. Many of these people have been sending remittances home for the development of their countries. But when they are now deported back to their countries, this is going to create a major economic crisis in many of these countries. So this is one of the policies that Donald Trump is coming up with. Then, however, despite all of this, we could witness that's to the American system, to the credit of the American system. We find out that many of these policies are being challenged in law court in the United States. So it's not like, the American judicial system is very strong. I think they are going to provide a check in a way. Then European Union's response. If you look at that, the European Union has pledged continued support for global humanitarian aid. EU officials have risen and US's retreat from international perception of the policies have led to a evaluation of US leadership adjusting their stance on global issues, potential. Order. In essence, introduce as citizens throw the towel, and we must continue to see what we could do to reduce the negative impacts of these strange policies. Now, let's look at Trump's presidency and global peace, development, and African strategic response. What should Africa do in the face of all these changes, challenges that the world is facing? Let's first of all look at the global security implications. Global security implications. Trump's skepticism towards NATO raises concern about the future of collective security, potentially weakening the alliance. His suspension of military aid to Ukraine signals a US retreat from global leadership, emboldening authoritarian states like Russia and China. However, I think there is a change in that policy now. I think Donald Trump has been able to reverse himself. One thing about Donald Trump is that he's an eccentric leader. Somebody that I want to say is not so stable. His policies might not be stable as well. He might say something today, tomorrow he might reverse himself. So this is very concerning for global peace and security. Then economic nationalism and Africa's trade relations. Trump's protectionist policies threaten Africa's trade with US, particularly through potential changes to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. I think this is a very important aspect that the African countries need to look at and interrogate very seriously. Because during the presidency of Bill Clinton, the African Growth and Opportunity Act was signed by the American president, was passed by the Congress. This act enables African countries to export their commodities to the West at virtually free. But with Donald Trump now, there's a tendency that this AGOA is likely not to survive. And this is going to create a lot of economic crisis and underdevelopment in the third world. Then Africa's political stability and shifting alliances. A decline in US diplomatic engagement will encourage African authoritarian leaders, undermining democratic process within the continent. So if the United States withdraws and the field is now left open to anybody, to the dictatorial leaders in the world, this might not really help the growth and development of Africa, because authoritarian tendencies are always antithetical to development. Despite this, however, Africa might want to be collaborating with countries like China, like Russia, and the Gulf states, as a replacement of what we are witnessing in America. Then Africa's strategic response. We need to diversify our economic partnership. We need to strengthen trade with emerging interests like India, Brazil, European Union, and others. And the African trade agreement, Africa Continental Trade Agreement, should be strengthened in such a manner that Africans can trade with themselves, and there should be less reliance on the extra-African authorities. Then enhancing regional security cooperation. We need to strengthen institutions like the African Union, ECOWAS, so that the African countries will be able to integrate their security policies. And there should be less reliance on the United States and the Western world in particular. Then, investing in self-reliance, accelerating industrialization, innovation, food security. I think there's a need to stress this point very importantly. Nigeria is a monocultural economy, and most of the countries in Africa, African continent, they are like that. So there's a need to diversify the revenue base of the African economy. Over 90% of Nigerian foreign earnings comes from oil. We cannot feed ourselves, we import food. There's a need to invest heavily in agriculture. There's a need for African countries to invest heavily in infrastructure so that they can develop. Unless they do all of this, there may always be a serious challenge. Well, the Trump presidency presents both challenges and opportunities for Africa. While US engagement may decline, Africa must take a proactive role in shaping its own economic and security future. The next 4 years will test the continent's diplomatic agility, resilience, and ability to assert itself on the global stage. So the emergence of Donald Trump provides both opportunities and challenges. And Africa should be able to rise up to these challenges in such a way that the negative consequences of this strange development can be mitigated very well. Finally, I want to look at how Nigeria should respond, because we are mostly Nigerians. Most of us that are listening to me are mostly Nigerians. So what can Nigeria do to reduce the negative consequences of Donald Trump's presidency? Well, the first thing here is that we need to look at how we can assess the effect of the Trump's policy on United States, USAID. You find out that it has reduced substantially financing of this agency. So Africa Nigeria needs to look at how it can interrogate these issues, so much so that the effects of this withdrawal of funding in USAID by the United States will have less negative consequences on Nigeria. And I think the government now has been making efforts within this respect. Then there should be diplomatic engagements. Nigeria cannot say because we have an eccentric, almost unpredictable president, we will not engage with the United States. Nigeria should continue to use our diplomatic channels to engage the United States as far as what the country will benefit from its policies. Then diversifying international partnerships. Nigeria doesn't have to rely solely on the United States and the West. There are many countries in Asia now that Nigeria can collaborate with, like India, like China. Also in Southern America, we have Brazil and other countries that we can work with. Again, Nigeria needs to strengthen its healthcare infrastructure. This one is very, very important. Many of our doctors are leaving Nigeria because of the deplorable economic conditions in Nigeria. So Nigerian government needs to look at this and make sure that the adverse consequences of whatever policy that Donald Trump might come up with will have less effect on the country. Then, I said it earlier, economic diversification. We need to diversify the revenue base of the Nigerian economy. We cannot be depending solely on only one resource, which is oil. So I think this is a challenge for the Tinubu government to make sure that the governors, the state governors, they have a major role to play in this respect. Over 90% of the land resources in Nigeria are owned by these governments. Yet, they are not investing in agriculture. Nigeria keeps importing food. So I think this is a very critical aspect of what the Tinubu government should be looking at. Then enhancing regional cooperation. This is where we need to have another look at ECOWAS. The 3 members of this ECOWAS that are trying to leave the country, the body, I think West African countries need to sit down and see what they can do about this. So regional integration, economic integration is very, very important. ECOWAS, African Union, and all other international organizations within Africa must come together to cooperate so that this Nigeria and other parts of the African country, African continent can continue to develop. Then there should be a united African stance on many of the crises, many of the challenges that Africa and Nigeria are facing today. There's a need for cooperation among these countries so that at the end of the day, the adverse consequences of Donald Trump's policies will be reduced on Nigeria and in Africa. So I want to end on an optimistic note that what this the presidency of Donald Trump is telling Africa and the world, and Nigeria in particular, is that self-reliance is a major factor in international politics. The moment you start depending on other countries for your security, for your economic survival, I think that we have been able to see this in Europe. For more than 50 years, the European nations have been looking up to the United States for security under NATO. But you can now see that Donald Trump is no longer in support of NATO, and anything could happen to NATO any moment from now. So Nigeria has to learn from this, that when you continue to look outward for your security, most of the military needs of Nigeria, most of our food and industrial needs are from outside. So there is a need for us to look inwards and see what we can do to address all these challenges so that Nigeria and Africa become less dependent on the world, at the outer world. I think Donald Trump's emergence has shown the world, Africa and Nigeria in particular, that self-sufficiency in food, in infrastructure, in development, These are basic imperatives that no country can just toy with. And for a very long time, most countries in Africa, and Nigeria in particular, we have not been taking all of these issues seriously. Why, for instance, should Nigeria be importing food, given the arable land we have, the good climate we have? So with all of this, I think there's a need to look inwards and see how we can mitigate the negative consequences of Donald Trump's second presidency. There's hope for Africa, and there's hope for Nigeria. If we can join hands together with the government, Africa cannot do to bring about sustainable peace and development to the continent. I want to most sincerely thank you for your attention in the past 40 minutes. It has been my privilege to address this august body. Thank you so very much.
Professor Alabi.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, well done. We found the lecture stimulating and entertaining. I will make a few comments before inviting others to also make their comments. Well, the summary of it all is that we have a very disruptive president in Donald Trump, and he has he's like a bull in a china shop, destroying everything, changing the order of things, and forcing people to rethink things that they had always taken for granted. As you concluded, for us in Africa and in Nigeria, we should aim for self-reliance, not continue to rely, because, you know, the literature, you are in political science, so the literature on foreign aid is very extensive, and actually an objective evaluation actually will lead to the question, is it really a good thing to receive foreign aid? Because in the end, it is the interest of the aid giver that is served. And sometimes it's a double-edged sword, like we've just seen about USAID and Boko Haram. Of course, the people of Maiduguri, people like Professor Badejo would tell you, the influx of NGOs since the beginning of the counterinsurgency on Boko Haram surprises everybody. And they have so much money. They pay maybe 4 times the rent that others are willing to pay. And they take a property for 5 years, which means that they know what we don't know, that the conflict will last 5 years from now. So an American House of Reps member has come out to say that USAID was also funding Boko Haram. But we know, we don't have hard evidence, but we know that Boko Haram has been funded by France on behalf of its strategic partners for a long time. And of course, scientists know that France has always been anti-Nigeria for its own strategic reasons. So it's no surprise that it was involved in funding. At a point, a prominent Maiduguri elder told me that even the money that the Boko Haram boys were exchanging in the local foreign exchange market was euro, not dollar. So anyway, foreign aid has its own disadvantages. Now, the disruption on the international scene is more worrying because it might lead to major international conflicts. What we have always believed is that the unipolarity of the world would be maintained, And Russia, a democracy, was on the other side of the pole. But Donald Trump has been a Russian asset for 40 years. And he's not ashamed to align with them, even against America's interest. And you saw the showdown with Zelensky, and it was all to impress Russia, to show that Trump is a good boy. He's doing Russia's bidding by humiliating this upstart Zelensky. And it shocked the world. It shocked Europe. So I'm not surprised. I will not be surprised if after some time, Europe finds accommodation with Russia. Because, you know, when Putin was defending himself after invading Ukraine, one of the things he said was that he offered to join NATO, because they have renounced communism and they are practicing, quote unquote, democracy. So okay, let me join NATO. Now, if Putin joins NATO, then who is NATO going to fight? So there will be no enemy to fight. And why didn't they accept? Because they needed an enemy to fight to justify all those defense budgets. So in time, maybe in 10 years' time, it may well be the case that Putin will, Russia, under Putin or under anybody else, might actually join NATO. And then people like Trump will be left out in the cold, because there will be no master to serve on the other side of the pole. But another prediction that I would dare to make is that, in fact, the Trump regime or Trump administration might not even survive the 4 years allocated to it by the American Constitution, because his disruption is so extensive that the storm is gathering within the US. His attack on the federal bureaucracy in the name of savings, the prominent role of Elon Musk, who, of course, is not surprising that he is from South Africa, the South African whites who left because they couldn't stay under majority black rule. So deep inside a racist. And these are the people that have rallied around Donald Trump, who himself is a racist. And of course, all these events were triggered by Obama's victory in the presidential election for his first term and second term, because he and his strategists exploited the dynamics and the demographics of the US to clinch victory. And then this was a wake-up call to the white supremacists to say, well, we must get our country back. And it was there all in Trump's rhetoric, even the first time, his first presidency, when he was campaigning, that when he addressed the rural whites who are not really interested in voting, he mobilized them to vote. And he also studied the demographics and how to manipulate it to win victory. So he ruled he was president for only 4 years, and he committed so many atrocities, but because the justice system was so slow, it was not possible to get him to account for everything he did, and now he has come back. Well, somebody did say that one of the ugliest things about democracy is that the majority who vote are stupid people, and they might one day give power to one of themselves to exercise on their behalf. And this is what has happened with Donald Trump. So my prediction is that Donald Trump is not even likely to conclude his term because of the disruptions. And right now there is a lot of discontent within the Republican Party, but people are afraid to express themselves because of the consequences, since Trump is a very vindictive leader and doesn't even pretend that you are entitled to your own opinion. He will crush you. So I see the storm gathering, and internationally, I see America being isolated. Europe will learn to live without American support, and the world would learn to live without American support. And in the end, I think Americans will regret ever electing this maverick as a president. Thank you very much for tolerating me. But I will now invite others to please raise their hand electronically, and then I will allow them to speak. Thank you. Yes, Mr. President.
We must conclude by 5:45. So please, all those speakers should please keep their comments very short and straight to the point. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Sogolo, your hand is up.
Okay, yes, Professor Sogolo, please.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. I really have enjoyed the presentation by Professor Alabi. It was clear, and he made this point right from beginning. You know, moderator, you referred to Trump as a bull in a Chinese shop. I think it's that's being nice to him. It's worse than that. Trump is not just a bully. Trump is like, it's chaotic. It's like an insane. I mean, the last thing I heard this afternoon was that he has in fact said that he was going to, you know, impose a tariff of 200% for one country. It's terrible when a man behaves like that. And then tomorrow he might even, you know, cancel that. So he's erratic. And, you know, the suggestion by Professor Alabi that at the end, we must take care of ourselves. I think that is the real solution. When he talks about diversification, yes, I agree. It proposes some other solution. But I think our problem really, if we must stand on our own, has to do with the dependence of the local currency, of our own currency, the Naira, on the dollar. I mean, it's a very, very difficult problem challenge to resolve. The point here is that even when we're trying to resolve this particular challenge, which really was worsened by the removal of subsidy, we try to resolve it, for instance, through the coming into the scene by Dangote's refinery. We find that that solution is being sabotaged from within. And when I say from within, not just the private sector, but also from within government, which is terrible if that is happening to us. So how can we resolve our own problem if we cannot, you know, come together between the individuals and our own government? Well, it's a dangerous thing if a government itself is beginning to do something which seems to suggest that it doesn't want these challenges resolved. I thought that there was not much, the emphasis on that by Professor Alabi wasn't too much. And it's a point that needs to be emphasized, the exchange rate and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see the hand of Professor Soyinka. Please, Madam. Go ahead.
Many thanks. Many thanks to our presenter, and I really appreciate the summary and the insight also given by our moderator. Thank you very much, sir. I think in Nigeria we say, "Empire go, empire come," or "Soldier go, soldier come," and I think that is what is happening now. And like you've said, it's time for us on the African continent to reset. I think this aid, we blame colonization, we rely on so much aid, and now finding out that these aids come with lots of very tragic strings attached. So we need to unite. We've been divided by whether we were colonized by the British or colonized by the French. And that's how we've been dealing with each other. Now, with Trump's ascension to power, the people that he had been firing, he's canceled DEIA, diversity and inclusion, equality and inclusion. And he's removing people who are not white and who are not men. Those are the people he's removing. And so what I'm driving at is that he's really coalescing around the white supremacists. And I wonder what the implication will be eventually with European countries who are also white. So we need to rethink our own alignment, first within ourselves, regionally on the continent, and also outside. Who are we going to align with, and in what position? We need to set our own terms and declare our own independence outside the control of whoever before we are even capable of seeking alignment outside. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Professor Da Silva, I see your hand up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Musali Jubril. And then, of course, I want to commend the efforts of the presenter today, that's Professor Alabi. I think there's one area that I believe that should also be explored. Of course, Professor Soyinka has just mentioned that one, and that has to do with the continental integration. I know that there's a development right now, projecting, common currency and consumption of raw materials within, in order to be able to provide a job for our teeming youth that are jobless, and a host of other things. And I know that if this continental integration is made to go through, it will reduce any dependence of any African nation on European aids or American aids. I think that should also be explored. The fact that our mineral resources could be exploited, could be processed within, and then Europe and America can become the market for the sales of our finished products. I think that is one area that we need to have a big, and I think that one area America and the global north is opposed to, because their very existence depends on our being perpetually exploited. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are you done, Professor Da Silva?
Yes, I am through.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other hand up? Yes, Temitope Maberu. Is it Fayemi or something like that? Yes. I see your hand up. And then
Yes,
after you, yeah. And
Can I
after
be
you,
asked that? Can I be asked that?
yes, I was just saying after you, it will be Professor Ekaola. Okay, go
All right.
ahead. Yes.
Firstly, I want to thank our professor guest lecturer for the interesting discussion, for the interesting presentation. However, Prof, I would like to add, is the time not to be, positions of, Western political, theories, particularly on the question of authoritarianism. What forms an authoritarian, regime on the African continent? Can I still go ahead, sir?
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, what forms the basis of an authoritarian government within the African continent? More often than not, we hear, Western scholars, terming governments within the African continent, I mean, governments that are not doing according to their bidding, authoritarians. When in actual fact, for some of us across the African continent, we believe that there is nothing like civilian rule today across the African continent. What we have, indeed, is civilian dictatorship. The consistent periodic electoral system elections are just have the news. This whole election, Western electoral processes, just have the news for the elites across the African continent to continue to make the vast resources of our people. So I'm saying that is the time not right for us to begin to look at governance within the context of economics, within the context of economic transformation, and not necessarily, how the political structure, how it aligns with what exists in the West. That would be my question, sir. I mean, that would be my intervention, sir. I'm particularly on authoritarianism. Can't we, break all of these things and begin to ask for a consistent alternative? And I want to say that the current disposition of Trump on, the world order shouldn't. I think also that we shouldn't ignore the fact that what Trump is really saying is that dependency has ended. For the American, politics and what have you. That is that the American states will not be involved in the economic activities of countries across the globe, particularly the third world countries. The point is that economic independency is what I think that we really need to lay emphasis on. Economic independency. Because what is happening in Congo has shown some of us that indirectly American elites are involved through the multinational corporations. They are involved in what is happening in that particular country, through their support and what have you. So I just want to say that on the question of economic dependency and on the question of authoritarianism, the position of authoritarian regimes, the whole question around we distorting, we breaking, all of these nuances around what form of politics, what form of electoral system, what form of economic system would transform the African continent. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ekaola.
Yeah, thank you so very much, sir. First, I would want to thank Professor Alabi for the insightful presentation today. And my contribution will be that, well, first, as has been said, Trump is a wake-up call to Nigeria and Africa that we need to pay particular attention to our own interests and that we shouldn't depend on others, as others have said. But my concern is that looking at our leadership at present, I wonder if we have the level of commitment to push policies that would actually foster growth and development in our country, and also pursue the kind of policies across Africa that will facilitate cooperation and, of course, integration that would result in the kind of growth and development that we actually desire to have. And I was also wondering that, well, when we come together like this, we come up with fantastic ideas. And my take is that to a large extent, we are discussing among ourselves, and that we should begin to seriously think about how we can go a step further to actually influence policy and also get government to act in accordance with some of the conclusions that we draw when we interact like this. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. We have less than 10 minutes to go, so I need to get back to Professor Alabi to give him an opportunity to respond, after which we can now call it a day. Thank you, Professor Alabi. It doesn't seem to be responding, and I have unmuted him. Is he still with us?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay, please.
Well, I want to most sincerely thank all of you for your attention and for the various comments. Well, I want to start with the last speaker, who said that there is a need for us to go beyond brainstorming and embark on influencing policy, government policy. I think this is very important. Virtually every 2 weeks, this platform holds a seminar. And these seminars are very robust ones that have been able to bring out important issues that could aid the development of Africa. So there's a need for us to look at the policy dimensions of what we have been doing, because without good policies reflecting what we have been saying, we have been discussing, the African continent and Nigeria will remain the same. So that's my point on that. Well, the issue of authoritarianism in Africa and having a rethink on our governance, I think this is a very important point. Now, if you look at what is happening in Rwanda, by the Western standard, Rwanda will be an exception. Might not be acceptable because the president in that country has been in power for more than 20 years. They will have been suggesting that, well, let's have a change. Paul Kagame is doing a very good job there. I was in Rwanda for about 10 days, about 10 years ago, 6 years ago. What I saw in that place was able to convince me beyond any shadow of doubt that we need to rework, we need to rethink our democratic or what our governance system in Nigeria. Every 4 years, democracy we are talking about, I'm not sure it's really working. I'm not sure it's really working. We need to have a look at that. But basically, and broadly speaking, Nigeria became independent 65 years ago. Yet, we still keep on blaming the West for our woes. This is what I call lamentation thesis in many of my writings. And the most speakers this evening have been able to allude to the fact that there's a need for us to look inwards. The African Free Trade Area, then cooperation, intra-Africa cooperation, and good leadership, looking inwards. You know, many of the economic policies of the West might not work in Africa. The Washington Consensus that we have been practicing for a very long time, the neoliberal doctrine, has never worked in Africa. The devaluation of currency, I thank the prof for raising that point, is not helping Nigeria. So what I want to suggest here is that we need to have an economic think tank that can come up with blueprint for Nigeria's economic development. Maynard Keynes did that in the 1930s. It was his policy, his suggestions we are able to bring about an end to the economic depression in Europe. So we can look at that. And like what the chairman said, I think I agree with him strongly. The eccentric policies of Donald Trump, I think, might not endure, because global governance is based on stable and predictable structures, which will help the world to be a better place. But from what we are seeing under Donald Trump is chaos. Look at all these tariff imposition, forceful deportation, and the rest of that, the likely breakdown of NATO. I'm of the opinion that at the end of the day, the Americans might regret ever electing him. But it's too early in the day to predict what his presidency might look like towards the end of his administration. But what I know is that with this man in power, the superpower status of the United States might come to an end very soon. So, and it will be very sad for the Western world. But it's okay, because if they continue the development of the West and that of Africa and the third world, they are inversely related. When the United States and the Western world are developing, Africa is underdeveloping. And when Africa is underdeveloping, and when Africa is developing, the West is underdeveloping. So maybe the collapse of the United States and maybe the Western powers might even bring about a new order in the international system. So by and large, I want to most sincerely thank all of you for your comments, all the senior academics and scholars that have contributed this evening, starting from the chairman, my academic provost, and others. I will factor in your various contributions in reworking this paper, because I think I'll be able to benefit from your various comments, which I think will help to produce a better version of this paper. So once again, I thank the chairman, I thank the president of this august body, the entire members of the organization for giving me this platform to speak to the 2014 American presidential elections and sustainable peace and development, 2024 rather, 2024 American presidential elections and sustainable peace and development in the world. It has been a very wonderful evening for me. Thank you so very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Professor Alabi. I want to acknowledge the presence of our foundation president, Emeritus Professor Ayo Bankoshe, as well as Professor Dan Izebaye, Emeritus Professor Dan Izebaye, another very senior past president of the Academy. I want to thank all those who made the effort to participate in this dialogue. And I want to also thank the president for facilitating, and also to request whether he has something to say. Mr. President.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Let me begin by thanking you for graciously chairing this session and being so masterful in the way you have handled the session. I'm really, really pleased, and I really thank you for the good work. You've acknowledged the FP and Professor Dan Izebaye. Let me acknowledge Professor Sogolo, Professor Mofola Bajai, and all the others, along with your kind self. Our next session is 2 weeks' time, on the 27th of March. The speaker is Professor Mbachu, also of the NBA, and he's speaking on BRICS nations and the remaking of world order, challenges and implications for Africa. But on April 9, we're having our biennial lecture, which will be holding at Federal University Lokoja. There will be the virtual component of that program. The lecture is going to be on the humanities in the modern digital world, to be delivered by Professor Yakubu Ochefu. And the session will be chaired by Professor Ishaq Oluide, the Registrar of JAMB. You are going to have it, it's already in our mailbox. We are going to put the updated version on the various platforms. So please be ready to join us. Let me appreciate all of you for joining us. It's exactly 5:45 p.m. I will need to close this session. Let me appreciate you once again and thank you and wish you the very best. To our Muslim brothers and sisters, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. God bless.
The session stands closed. Do what they do at convocations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.